Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We want to welcome you and thank you for spending your Valentine's Day with us to share the love. We're going to go ahead and start with a moment of silence, and then we are going to have Mr. Parker join us and lead us for the Pledge of Allegiance from Liberty High School.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Governing Board, we're moving on to 5.1 to address the agenda and consider adoption or recommend any changes. Is everything looking good order? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, we will proceed as presented. We're going to go ahead with 6.1, staff recognitions. Ms. Dent. None tonight. All right, we're moving right along. And none this evening. We're moving on to 6.2, board recognitions. Ms. Corey Unreal, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I just have a couple, and I'll try to be brief. I just wanted to say that I was able to attend part of the phonics, the foundations training that the district provided, and it was wonderful, and I'm just really excited that we have adopted this curriculum. And I think the teachers there were very excited as well, so excited about that. Also wanted to thank the city of Peoria for inviting me to attend the Peoria Day at the Legislature. It was a good experience for me as a new board member, meeting some of our local legislators and that kind of thing. Also wanted to put a shout out to the Feel Up to Play program. I was able to attend an event for that, and they're a great partner with the Dairy Council and the NFL. And other than that, just wanted to say thank you to the Community Advisory Committee members who are working on the override and bond recommendation. Thank you.
Ms. Pengrelli?
None this evening.
Okay. Mr. Sandoval?
Yes, thank you. So a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to attend a football game that's in partnership with, and Danielle, you can help me, the Unified Sports program with WWE. Is that right? So, and then I attended a Unified Sports basketball game at Sunrise Mountain High School. But I guess for me, when I was there, it's just, again, they definitely, when we talk about every student every day, and watching the school spirit out there and all those kids just with their big smiles and being very inspired with hope, it was just a proud moment again for me. And again, I've always said it, but it's an honor to sit up here and serve all of you and certainly our entire district. In addition to that, I was honored to help judge the patriotic speech contest at Oakwood last week, and the poise and articulate individuals are the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is just amazing. So hats off to certainly our teachers and staff, that again inspire hope in those students. But it was just for me it was a peace of mind that our future leaders are looking at our future leaders. Our future is in good hands, without question. Thank you.
Thank you. I do just have two quick ones. Governing board members, I had the privilege and honor to attend Georgetown University Certificate in Education Finance beginning of the course, which started at the end of January and will last through May. But if you are interested, the course is so robust, and poor Ms. Myers gets a lot of my questions now that I enlightened by the finance, and the importance and the message was that the governing board has a responsibility to look through the finances of a school district, and this course definitely helps ask and guides those conversations. So I encourage all of you to do that. The other thing I want to recommend is also going to the State Education Committee right now, there's a lot of conversation. We had our representatives, I ended up attending and testifying on behalf of Senate Bill 1187 for financial literacy, but Senator Casada, who represents LD 29, our southern part of our district, and Senator Rick Gray sit on that committee that also represent LD 21 legislative district. To see them in the conversation representing their constituents in this district is quite an honor to see that happen. So thank them for their time, and I encourage fellow governing boards to be a part of that conversation at the state level. So. And our superintendent?
I have nothing special for this week, other than there was an amazing daddy-daughter dinner dance at Oakwood, and my Miss Charlie went with her papa, and was very, very, very fun evening. So that was what I have.
Thank you. A lot of great things going on our campuses, and you can see them across the newspaper and social media and Twitter. Follow one avenue, and you will find something that is going great in our district. Moving on to 7.1, public requests. Address the governing board, matters not included on the agenda. I don't have any green slips. Okay. 8, consent calendar. Governing board, are there any items that you would like to pull? I would like to pull 8.4, the travel requests. And then for the rest of the consent agenda items, I do need a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda minus, is it 8.1?
8.4?
8.4, excuse me.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Pangarelli and a second by Mr. Sandoval to approve the consent agenda item excluding 8.4. Motion passes 4-0, and I do apologize, Ms. Doan cannot make it this evening as she has to take care of a family issue, so, and one absent. All right, 8.4, I appreciate governing board the opportunity to discuss this item, is traveling requests. I wanted to bring this up for a couple reasons, actually, is taking a look at, it's not very often we bring these up, but there are two parts of it. There's a student travel, and I wanted to highlight the fact that we are supporting our students, and the district and the community can see the investment that we're making and the opportunities we're providing our students. The other piece I wanted to review is the staff travel. There's one particular item, or two items that I would like more information on, is number 12 and number 15. The rest of them I'm comfortable, as I've had an opportunity to review them with our superintendent. I really like the fact that looking at all these requests by our administrators, a lot of them include taking teachers. It's another way we can offer, if we can't offer them dollars in salary, we can offer them and recognize them through opportunities. And seeing administrators take their staff with them is a big win for our district. But as for number 12 and number 15, I would like to have more information. So I move to approve the out-of-state travel requests, excluding number 12 and number 15.
I just have a question. If those are not approved this evening, will that person be able to attend?
I believe, Ms. Pangarelli, Ms. Sayas-Martinez, that we do have the opportunity to wait until certainly next time to approve those. I don't think we're under that. It's a tight amount of time, but we have time. Yes, sir. Am I correct? Yes, I think they're nodding
Madam
yes.
Madam President, Superintendent Thompson, the one trip is scheduled travel in June, and the other is scheduled for July. The reason why they're on here at this time is typically folks need to make arrangements with flights and hotel reservations so that there's room for them at those activities. If we needed to wait 2 weeks, we certainly can, unless there's a question that we can answer for you tonight to expedite to move forward or not move forward. It's at your discretion.
President Seahawks Martinez, is the reason you pull them as mainly the cost?
So taking a look at, we recently had the opportunity to focus on our strategic plan. Where are we spending our dollars so that we can focus on student success and safety and well-being? I look at this travel requests, and for this particular site, there are 3 requests for the administrator exceeding $13,000. And I wanted to know what was the direct correlation to student achievement and safety and well-being, and what measurements would we be looking at to see the return on those 2 pieces of the strategic plan. And I wanted to get more information on that.
Madam President, members of the board, on item 12, I did speak with Ms. Mills, the principal, and you'll notice that's Title II funds, so it's not a school-based fund, but it is a fund that is allowable for professional development. So there are some restrictions on where that money can be spent. It's for professional development. The opportunity that she's applying for, I don't believe that she's received admittance yet into the program. You have to apply for the Harvard University experience. I know that in the past, we've sent a number of school principals there that have applied and have been accepted. It's a very rewarding professional development experience to study at Harvard University with the thought leaders in education, with people from around the world, actually. So she's submitting that travel with hopefully being accepted into the program and then be in a situation where she could make those appropriate reservations. But I do want to point out it is Title II funds. Item 15
Can
is-
you elaborate, since it's recorded, what Title II funds are?
They're for professional development,
Where the monies, where do they come from?
federal funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And could it be used for any staff?
Yes,
Okay.
and we do. If you look at our Title II budget, we do an extensive amount of professional development, both in-house and out-of-house.
And
So
does every title, so all Title II funds, are they by site-based? Do we as a district distribute those funds, or is it one big pot and anybody who submits it?
One big pot, and people submit that.
I-
It is allocated to school districts in one big pot of money, and then we align those particular efforts in Title II to our district initiatives or district strategic plan. There's also funds that staff members, teachers, et cetera, can make application to participate in professional development using those funds.
Thank you. And again, it's not, I definitely see value in the program, and I hear great things about it. That's not my intent. Seeing that this is 3 conferences in one summer, where is the focus going to be? If you're getting all this information, what measurements are we going to focus on, and do they overlap? And so that's my concern. I just wanted more information. And it sounds to me, since she hasn't received acceptance yet, we may have more time on that specific number 12 to get more information on. And if she's applying for any grant programs or scholarships, to go to that. I know with my personal experience, I did get a scholarship from Georgetown as a result of being a part of a public education system. So that's something I would like to see considered.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Sayas Martinez, can I just add that of these 3, the priority for Mrs. Mills was the first one, the Avid one, number 1. She sees that as the most overreaching for the entire staff. I know she'll be excited to get that approved, and then we'll get you more information on the other 2.
So let me just repeat for the governing board. Again, I still wanted more information on 12 and 15. It sounds to me that we do have time for number 12 as she has not been accepted yet and possible other funding sources. The priority was number 13, and I am comfortable approving that this evening.
So, a quick question, Mr. Savoy, what kind of information do we hope to get back from our staff that travel to these types of conferences? Again, I think they're invaluable. Anytime we can offer professional development, I think that is a critical component, to an overall compensation package, right? Without question. But, when they do return, how does that information cascade down across any travel? Not just these, but this is an overarching question. What's our expectation as a district?
Madam President, members of the board, again, that goes to each individual person that attends those conferences and the type of conference. So it varies what they bring back. Certainly, it's our hope and expectation that what you learn, you apply in the work that you do on a daily basis. That would certainly be the expectation.
Yeah, I think potentially what may help, because again, I love the professional development that we provide our staff, but what may help is in the future is if there's even a Cliff Note version or an executive summary, of some of these opportunities that we can just kind of read and understand a little bit more. I think that may help, and as we take a look at these to, just say, yeah, this is great, right? There's no doubt in my mind, I think it's great, but I think that may help just be able to make a more informed decision.
I appreciate that. I did pull the policy GCCE that discusses professional conference. I was actually going to consider or make a recommendation if the board could have a report at the end for a future study session. We're already regulated heavily, and so to mandate some kind of policy, but to David's point, Mr. Sandoval's point, having some kind of feedback that we're having a direct correlation to student success or professional development for our district would be something I would like to see in the future.
I was just going to say, when staff turn in these requests, what type of documentation do they provide? Because maybe it's already there.
Madam President, members of the board, Mrs. Underhill, that's correct. They do submit to us itinerary of the conference, the broad parameters of what they will be exposed to while they're there. As I was looking over several of the other items, I think they're very self-explanatory on what you would anticipate, what they'll bring back based on the type of conference. But I think from time to time, you do have questions about, okay, so what is that specific alignment? But we do see that information. It's attached to their packet when they turn that in, the summary of that.
Okay.
So in the future, I would be comfortable just emailing the board what that packet looks like just for an informational, and then maybe we can make recommendations. If we already have that in place, a line item that states this directly ties to the strategic plan, quadrant A, student achievement, so on, and make our recommendations based on that so that we can
Great.
see it.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Easy enough, yep.
Perfect.
Okay.
So
yeah,
no study session needed.
Yeah, no, great, yeah. And again, for me, I'm okay with, garnering additional information, but again, to Ms. Pingarelli's point, I definitely don't want to impede on this individual's opportunity, to attend these. So if we're okay from a timing regard, to vote on this at our next board meeting, I'm okay with that. But if we're not, okay.
Okay, so I made a motion.
Your motion was with minus those two?
Yes.
I'll second it.
So I have a motion by myself and a second by Ms. Pangarelli to approve the travel, out-of-state travel excluding number 12 and 15.
Do we need
Ms.
to
Cornier.
state that it will be reviewed at a later time, just to make sure it's not going to?
Yes, we'll add it to, Michelle's so awesome keeping us on track, making sure future agenda, and yep.
Yes. What have we got?
Motion passes 4-0, one absent. Thank you very much. Moving on to 10.1, update on Superintendent Student Advisory Council. Ms. Danielle Airy.
Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson. I'm here before you this evening to introduce you to one of our bright young students from Liberty High School. Before I do that, I did want to just provide you with a little bit of additional information. I know since we do have one new governing board member, I wanted to make sure you were all brought up to speed. You have met him before, most of you, to share an update on the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. And as most of you know, that council was put in place as another way for our superintendent, for our leadership team to get some feedback directly from the student voice. As you know, our student council leaders, not only the presidents, but certainly their entire student councils, which in most schools are quite large, really are a good representation of our students. They tend to kind of have a pulse of what's going on a high school campus. And so we meet with them on a quarterly basis, get some feedback from them on a variety of different topics. So we haven't been before you with an update in just a few months. We wanted to bring forward a quick update for you from that student perspective. So with that said, I will just turn the time over to Mr. Parker Forrester, Student Body President from Liberty High School.
Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, and Mrs. Pallas Thompson. Excuse me, sorry. Recently, we met with Mrs. Pallas Thompson for our Superintendent Student Advisor Council meeting held at Raymond S. Kellis High School. We were catered pizza and an amazing lunch. Over at the meeting, we went over our school updates, which is how we start every single meeting. Basically, what we're doing on campus, what our student councils are doing, and what we can do to improve. We also went over our district's annual high school unity games for the student councils, which will be hosted at Liberty this year on February 26th. We're super excited for that, and that's just a way for us to share ideas through the district and bounce ideas off of each other and just allow bonding through the students, and it's a great time for all of us, and we're all super excited. And at this meeting, we met with Mrs. Dr. Walters and Mrs. Leonard about the challenges our students face in their everyday life at home and on campus. This was probably the best meeting we've ever had. I can say that on behalf of me and my fellow student body president and peers. Because we went over this, we talked about the struggles we face through substance abuse, mental health, social media, and many other factors that play into our everyday lives that not the adults get to see every single day. One thing that we really enjoyed was going over the mental health, and I would like to say we are really enjoying the movement our district is going on recognizing what our students are struggling with every single day. Our last campaign item was the voter registration campaign that I've been working on. I'll go over that in further detail later. And then our last meeting will be at Ironwood in April, and I look forward to being back here with you guys to update you on that. I stand for any questions the board has.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Mr. Sandoval.
Mr. Forrester, I'll tell you, the pizza that you received is more than what we get in our executive session, so. So good for you. I'm kidding. Thank you for your leadership. It's one thing that we've always talked about as a board, meaning ensuring that our students' engagement and voices are absolutely just involved in what we do as a district, but certainly heard, right? And it's, when you talk about the social and emotional element, of learning and ensuring that, we are very proactive in that regard to stay in front of what may be coming around the corner is critical, to our students' success. So the question I have for you is just in and around, our strategic plan. We have these, 4 pillars, or Mr. Gay calls them perspectives, right? And those, communicated to the student liaisons to understand, how they align their conversations with the overall vision of the district. Is that something that you have knowledge of, I guess is
Yes, at the meetings, we are given updates on what you guys are doing as a district to help us as students, and that's something that we went over heavily last, we were given 2 meetings ago, yeah, my bad. And then this meeting, we were given a little resource flyer that we all took home back to our campus, and I know our students love hearing that from you guys.
Perfect. And one thing that I will continue to push for, and hopefully you're comfortable with it, or maybe one of your fellow students, but I do feel, at some point, we should have a seat up at the dais, for one of our students to truly be engaged in these board meetings on a consistent basis. But thank you again for taking the charge and for what you do to ensure that, our students are put in a position to be successful.
Thank you.
Ms. Pangarelli?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for coming, and I am looking forward to your next presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Underhill?
I just want to say thank you as well, and thank you for your leadership, because I know that takes a lot of extra time with, I'm sure, a rigorous class schedule. I also just, if you can remember, what were some of, when you were talking about the mental health component, what are some of the things that sort of rose to the top as far as, I don't know, recommendations or needs that the students kind of voiced that you could remember?
President Sehar Martinez, members of the board, and Mrs. Pallas-Thompson, and Ms. Underhill. One of the main things that we focus on is anxiety. A lot of students nowadays suffer from anxiety, and we still don't know the full cause of that, but I know you guys are doing extensive research in ways for us to improve and for us to have a better, healthy life for us to live and for us to do better in the classroom through that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Echo what my fellow governing boards stated. The fact that you have validated, as from the governing board side, that we are on the right track, I can take a deep breath, so thank you for that. It's important, and we've said it over and over, serving the whole child, and you're right, dealing with the mental health is part of that conversation so that we can have you become successful students and adults. Continue to let us know how we can help. I would love to be invited. I'm sure my fellow governing board members would love to be invited for a roundtable discussion on hearing firsthand what we can do more for you and your peers. But to Beverly's point, Ms. Pangarelli's point, let's go ahead and see this next presentation.
Thank you so much, President Sehar Martinez.
Well, President Sehar Martinez, members of the board, Mrs. Pallas-Thompson, as we transition into this next presentation, I also just wanted to give you just a brief bit of background information. You all may recall that we had a student from Centennial High School who was very vocal in coming forward last year and expressing this interest from the student perspective, which we just loved, about the importance of being a registered voter and really that right that all of our students are really about to inherit as they leave us. That was Mr. Billings, who was a student at Centennial High School. What he did was a lot of valuable research that he had compiled. He presented it to Mrs. Pallas-Thompson and myself one afternoon here in the conference room, and we were really inspired by the work he did, and really, with Mrs. Pallas-Thompson's leadership, wanting to make sure that work continued forward. It was really a natural transition and a natural fit when we met Parker at the very first meeting, and he expressed really the same desire to get engaged around this area. So this kind of came out of our first Superintendent Student Advisory Council, that we were able to chat with him and say, we've got this great work, but it's just started, and we think you might be just the one to kind of take that, really put some good thinking around it, and maybe expand that just beyond Liberty High School to all of the schools in our district. And so as you might imagine, even with his rigorous schedule and all of the things he's involved in, Parker got right to work on that and has really done a great amount of research, a great amount of work on what he will be bringing forward to you this evening. And so I know we've had other students express interest. He's already been in contact with them in moving that forward. So we'll turn it back over to him.
President Sehar Martinez, members of the board, and Mrs. Pallas-Thompson. Something I've been working on is the student voter registration campaign for our district. This is a project I've been working on for a few months after Ms. Aries and Ms. Pallas-Thompson had approached me after the first meeting. I immediately expressed interest due to me just being involved with politics, loving everything about it, and being an elected official, I know how important it can be. Like, one vote can make the difference. And personally, I believe that we can do way more as a district to make sure our seniors are getting the resources and information they need to know how to register to vote and where to even begin with that. So, as elected officials, I've gone over with the fellow student body presidents and my peers the importance of voting and the impact a single vote can have on the election. And my peers and I feel strongly this will have a great impact on our seniors. Something I learned from Boise State as I attended this last summer was the most important thing you can do for being a patriot is voting in a democracy. So I created a PowerPoint presentation that will be delivered to the seniors at their next senior meeting. And after this year, I truly hope that it can be incorporated into our government classes. So that way, each year we're getting more and more feedback for the students and more resources for them to get. In this presentation, it goes over a lot of things, but you guys have that, correct?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Oh, all right, sorry. So in the presentation, it starts off with a nice little quote from Thomas Jefferson. We do not have a government by the majority, but we have a government by the majority who participates. And I've done some research on some quotes about that, and this was one that really stood out to me just because it's 100% true. Politicians cater to the ones who vote, and if you're not voting, it's not a government for every single person. And then in the presentation, I went over why it matters and why every vote counts. Every vote counts with statistics like President Obama's 2008 election, where his popularity amongst younger votes impacted his election significantly. I believe this is an older version of the slideshow, and I can email you guys a new one because I added more statistics on elections as to when it gets close, and it even happened in our school elections. Just recently at Liberty, we had to do a runoff just to get our freshman class president because it was an actual tie. So we just want to express how important it is for one single vote. On the next slide, it goes over the age demographics. Millennials and Generation Z have surpassed baby boomers as the largest eligible voting group, and we've demonstrated this with the graph from CNN. We do have the powers, we do have the numbers, but we don't have the power because our younger voter generation is not voting. And this is something I'd like to change through this voter registration campaign, giving them the resources. What will be shared? Basically, we're going to go over how all levels of governments and their elections are important, especially pay attention to your local government as their decisions will impact your everyday life more than you think. And it helps play a role in choosing your leaders every single day. Everyone call politicians believe 500 others think the same as you, and that's just using your one voice that you think might be so small just to get one idea across to a politician. And then my favorite line is, your vote is your voice is your opinion, and voting makes your voice heard. That's something that I believe very strongly in, and I think will be great and beneficial for our seniors to hear. The next slide is how to register. It's very basic. It's not going to take more than 5 minutes for them to go over it. They only need their driver's license, and at the meetings they will have physical copy forms on voter registration if they don't want to do it on their smartphone or aren't able to. Next up is what to do after. Following this link, they'll be able to find out where to vote on election day and keeping up to date with all levels of government. That also mentions that they'll be eligible for the 2020 presidential election, which I hope gets them more interested. And on that side, it also says the national level government is very important, but also exhausting. State and city levels affect your everyday life way more than you guys think. And I think that's a huge thing that our younger generation isn't understanding, is that we aren't just voting for national level. You can vote for many other elections, many other important decisions made in our communities through board members and through state level elections and stuff like that. This is the timeline for basically how it was rolled out. I have already emailed all of our presidents the new updated campaign, and I have been following with them with email, and we talked about it at the recent meeting. Right now, none of them have given the presentation. It'll be given within the next month or so, and I'm waiting to hear back on the feedback from them. And then it's being presented not by me, but by each president, just because it's going to create a more personal environment for our seniors to hear from their elected official and peers who are the ones up there expressing their concerns for allowing us to vote and giving them the resources they need. Thank you guys so much, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Underhill?
It sounds great. It sounds like a great, and it's a simple plan, which I think is really, really important, because like I said, you guys have a lot going on already. And I have a junior, so I totally get it. One thing I just wanted to know is, I know that like our partner universities in the state, ASU, U of A, and all those partnerships, I know that they're also big at voter recruitment on their campuses, and they might be able to lend you a hand, I don't know, a resource, bodies to help kind of get this thing going. And then there's other organizations like Rock the Vote and Next Gen, and just some of those other ones that might have some materials, et cetera, that you could use that are already there. So just an idea to kind of think about, how can you leverage some of those things that already exist. But great job. It's a great plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pingarelli?
Oh, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for the presentation. I agree that we can use more informed voters. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yes, thank you again for your leadership. And you're right. I mean, democracy is not a spectator sport, right? So you definitely have to get engaged and be involved. I think some of the resources that Ms. Underhill just expressed are certainly ones to follow through with on. There are a couple others that are out there that are done on a national level. And what I really like about these programs is how cool would it be if each high school had a budget to be able to determine, to take in a bunch of ideas on how to use those dollars for the campus, right, by the students, which would kind of, it be in line with the entire democratic process from end to end, while registering, your peers to vote. And it's actually called a participatory budgeting process. They're out of DC, but I know some of our local schools or districts here actually have some of those programs, like Phoenix Union. All their high schools, I think 5 of their high schools, they each get like $7,000 for the students to determine, how to use those dollars on site, which, again, student voice, I think, you're our target audience. What a better source to go to figure out, what we need, on our campuses out of some of the other key priorities, right? So thank you again for what you do. But I would recommend looking into that PBP process nationally, and just seeing how that might fit into, what you're doing today.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval.
You're welcome.
I would like to have that conversation as well, especially when we decide where we spend our bond dollars, because what I've seen is a lot of our Peoria students come back to live in our communities. And so if they can have that voice even out of the get-go in their environment at the elementary or high school, or excuse me, at the high school level, and then they move back into the community, they can see the fruits of their labor. So that is definitely something we should consider moving forward. You brought up a good point, Ms. Pingarelli, about educated voter. I had an opportunity to speak to one of our senators and presented some information that is in front of us. And he stated that he would support of this type of drive. What he would like to see in addition to is when a student or a person has to register to vote, they also have to pick what party they belong to. So making sure that we are educating our students on all the parties available that aligns to state law, that is not influencing an election, obviously, but that we're educating our students on everything there is to offer about this process. And so that when they do check what box they want to belong to, it's because they made an informed decision. The last thing I want to add is our fellow governing board members across the state. I've seen Tolson, I believe, is the first one, Tolson Union, or Tolson, and then Phoenix Union just last week passed a resolution at the governing board level to have Election Day a holiday. Something to consider and research, and if that's something the students would be interested in, but definitely I would like to have it proposed from the student voice first, if something that we should consider as a governing board.
President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, Ms. Pallas Thompson. Thank you so much for your input. I'll definitely go back, take some notes, and get some more information for you guys, and I'd love to come back and keep you guys more informed after I talk with my peers and everything about that.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Can I just say, thank you, Parker. This group of students, you've asked, and I know that it was part of actually some goals, to make sure that our students were not just talking, which are important, about prom and homecoming and all of the exciting, fun things that were going on, but we're making some governmental and important decisions. And this group actually did look, and they're giving me input on the financial literacy resolution that's out there. Their thoughts on each of the strategic areas, regardless, have been so profound, and my friend here is pretty extraordinary. They all are. He's extra plus. So thank you, Parker, for all you do. Thank you. Appreciate you.
There's also, in 2020, 2 governing board seats up for reelection, just saying you just have to be 18. Or 3, yes, 3. Yes, 3. So, food for thought. Anybody
you'll be old
above
enough, right?
18.
Thank you.
Thank
Definitely
you.
take that into consideration.
Ms. Myers, I don't know how you're going to beat that. 10.3, presentation of the Peoria Unified School District Annual Financial Audit.
Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Pallas Thompson. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview of the fiscal 2018 Annual Financial Audit and Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also known as a CAFR, for the Peoria Unified School District. Tonight, I am joined by Mr. Dennis Maskey, CPA, Principal of Clifton Larson Allen, the CPA firm that conducted the fiscal 2018 financial audit for the district, as well as Mr. Michael Vaughn, CPA, the district's internal auditor. Mr. Maskey will present an overview of the audit process and will provide specific information related to the district's comprehensive annual financial report and single audit. Mr. Vaughn and I will provide Peoria Unified specific audit information, and we will review the USFR compliance questionnaire findings related to the fiscal 2018 financial audit and the steps that the district is taking to address the findings. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Maskey to join me for his portion of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board members, and Superintendent Pallas Thompson. My name is Dennis Maskey. I'm a principal at Clifton Larson Allen. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Before we get into our presentation, though, I would first like to thank Michelle and Michael and their staff. An audit is not an easy process. We're at the district for multiple weeks, long hours, asking for a lot of information, along with their other responsibilities. So we really appreciate everything that they do for us. As part of the audit process, what we do is we are examining assertions. And so what's an assertion? Assertion would be, we have this much cash in the bank. We owe this much to a vendor. We've received this much in revenue during the year. We could also call those account balances. And what we do as part of the audit is we're examining those account balances and assertions to make sure that they're reasonable and that they're not materially misstated. And so what we're doing as a result of an audit is we're rendering an opinion. We're not looking at, it's not full assurance. We're using sampling guidance. Obviously, we can't look at every single transaction that happens in an organization within a year. So we're giving reasonable assurance, and I'll talk about how we do that. And then we provide findings and recommendations, so best practices, ways organizations can improve, as well as any findings related to state compliance or federal compliance regulations. So since we're not giving absolute assurance, what are we doing? Well, we're doing a risk-based audit, meaning we're looking at those higher risks within a district or an organization. Risk can be where you have many transactions coming in. Liquid cash is always a risk, or where you have high dollar balances, bonds, pensions, those types of things that have significant liabilities on your balance sheet. Those are types of things that we look at, as well as when you're getting a lot of transactions in. And how do we examine those? We do it through inquiry and observation. The first thing we do as part of our audit is we talk to the management team. We've talked to individuals on the governing board just to get a sense of what's going on in the district during the year. And then we start digging into our substantive testing, where we are reviewing the internal control procedures, as well as looking at the support for the account balances. You guys should have received a reporting package. In there is the communication to governance. That's about a 4-page letter that's directly from the CPA firm to the district, the governing board, saying what happened during that audit process, if there was any new GASBs that came out during the year, and if we had any difficulties. In that reporting package is also the CAFR, the single audit report, which is based on your federal compliance, the USFR compliance questionnaire, which is a 26-page questionnaire of state compliance regulations, and then a management letter if it was applicable. Just to briefly go through the sections of a CAFR, we have the basic financial statements, and that includes the opinion. We rendered an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, the highest opinion that you can be awarded. We also have in there a lot of information on combining statements, where we break out all the individual funds. Your basic financial statements include your major funds, those most significant funds such as the general fund, special projects. And then there's a lot of required supplementary information in there, statistical information, the introductory section, as well as other information related to your pensions. The single audit, these are required for any organization that receives and spends over $750,000 per year in federal awards. And what we did is we render an opinion on that, and it gets submitted to the Federal Clearinghouse, which is the federal regulation, and that has been submitted for this year as well. Again, like I said, we rendered an unmodified, clean opinion on the district's compliance with federal programs, and we did not have any findings this year in the programs that we audited. Any questions for me?
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Sandoval.
Yeah, for me, so I think the last time you made, there were no findings, is it correct? And the slide prior to this one?
Yes, correct.
Throughout your assessment, so.
On the single audit report, there were no findings, correct.
Gotcha, perfect. So, thank you, for taking the time, Michelle, certainly you and your team, and ensuring that, we're compliant in this regard from a finance perspective. So, I know it takes a lot of time, a lot of work, so we really appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Ms. Pangarelli?
No questions?
Ms. Underhill?
I didn't have any questions. I mean, well, we had a lot of questions, but Michelle answered them very well. So thank you, and thank you, Michelle, for doing that. So, yeah.
I just want to acknowledge, thank you for getting us the packet prior to tonight's evening. Since I've been on the board, it's been delivered to us almost like a ritual, and when you speak, we open it all at the same time. So giving us the opportunity to review that information prior to today is a great start of preparing all this conversation. So thank you for all your hard work. I only had just one question or statement, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I compare this audit to last audit, there was the school attendance that came up twice. Do you mind elaborating on that information?
And President Ceja Martinez, members of the governing board, if I may, I'll continue. We have additional slides that do highlight the USFR compliance questionnaire and improvements that we've made between fiscal 27 and 18 in the attendance area.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Maskey. One of the 4 perspectives of the district's strategic plan is the stewardship of community resources. The annual financial audit, comprehensive annual financial report, and uniform system of financial records, or USFR, compliance with the USFR are all part of the strategic perspective to solidify and adhere to effective policies, practices, and accountability for district resources. In addition to the federal and state audit requirements, publishing a CAFR provides an overview of the district as a whole to our community. Each year, the CAFR is published on the district's website, along with the annual budget and our annual financial report. The information in the CAFR is evaluated by credit agencies each time the district sells bonds, and the data in the CAFR can affect our credit rating. In addition to the audited financial statements in the CAFR that Mr. Maskey referred to, factors affecting the district's financial condition and long-term planning can be found in the transmittal letter on pages 3 and 6 of the report, and a financial analysis of the district's funds, budgetary highlights, and economic factors affecting the fiscal 2019 budget can be found in the management discussion and analysis on pages 17 through 23. The Uniform System of Financial Records, or USFR, has been developed by the Office of the Auditor General and the Arizona Department of Education pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 15271. The USFR prescribes the minimum internal control policies and procedures to be used for an Arizona school district for accounting, procurement, financial reporting, budget setting and budgeting, attendance reporting, and various other compliance requirements. These policies and procedures are in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles and federal and state laws. District staff stay abreast of USFR compliance requirements and best practices by attending continuing professional education opportunities offered by professional associations, audit firms, the Auditor General's Office, the Arizona, as well as the Arizona Department of Education. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Michael Vaughn, our internal auditor, to join me and to discuss the fiscal 2018 USFR compliance questionnaire findings in detail.
President Sehar Martinez, members of the governing board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson, thank you for having me here tonight to walk you through the fiscal 2018 USFR compliance audit. Annually, districts around the state are required to contract with independent public accounting firms to have a USFR compliance audit as part of their annual financial audit. During the audit firm selects, samples, and performs procedures over 20 broad categories and requirements ranging from cash controls to records management or attendance to test the district's compliance in 250 specific areas of focus dictated by the Arizona Auditor General each year when the office publishes the USFR compliance questionnaire. Based on the responses documented in the USFR compliance questionnaire, the Auditor General determines if a district is compliant, marginally compliant, or not compliant. The exact methodology for determining which level of compliance a district falls into is not published, but the Auditor General considers the frequency and intensity of findings in the various areas of compliance. The district had 6 USFR findings in fiscal year 2018, one related to cash, one related to property control, and 4 related to student attendance. Specifically, the cash finding related to a deposit not being deposited within 5 days of the cash receipt. The property control finding related to 4 assets whose location did not agree with the location documented on the capital asset listing, and 1 item that was located on district property that was not on the capital asset listing when it should have been. Attendance findings related to 1 enrollment where the date was not documented on the paper enrollment form, 2 withdrawals that were not entered and reported to ADE within 5 days, as required by the USFR, and 1 withdrawal where the date on the physical withdrawal form did not agree with the date entered into the district student information system Synergy. I would like to help put some of these findings in context for you. Other than for the capital assets area, noncompliance was infrequent, 1 or 2 instances in the tested population. Attendance and timeliness of deposit findings are some of the most common USFR findings in these types of compliance audits. When I was an external auditor, I was honestly surprised if a district didn't have a timeliness of deposit finding and at least a handful of attendance findings. The volume that these areas get tested at, as well as that the district sees, it's just very rare that these findings don't occur. However, district management takes USFR compliance very seriously and will be working to address the findings of the audit. Staff members attend continuing professional education, as Michelle mentioned, through the Arizona Association of School Business Officials, as well as specialized industry groups, especially around procurement and attendance. Internal reviews are conducted to ensure compliance, and if we see any non-compliance as we're routinely reviewing transactions, we'll take a step back to provide real-time training as it's relevant. But I'd also like to provide you an example of what this actually looks like in day-to-day practice. The IMT department, which among its other duties oversees our attendance reporting to the state, implemented an internal review program with the team there after last year's audit. The IMT team did the same testing that the external audit firm does, communicated their findings to the schools, and provided targeted training based on those reviews. And it worked. In fiscal year 2017, the district had 15 attendance findings. This year we have 4. So I'd like to recognize and say thank you to the hard work being done over in the IMT department. I know it takes a lot of work to implement that type of program and then a lot of work to keep it going. But at this time, Mr. Maschke, Ms. Myers, and I are available to answer any additional questions you may have.
I'll just go ahead and just start this one off. It's great to see when received feedback that we are moving in the right direction to address it. So thank you very much to you and your team for addressing those situations and making positive gains. Ms. Pangarelli?
Well, I also wanted to say thank you very much. And the data that we had received was 2013, 14, 15, 16 through 18. This year actually seems to have the least number of dings, I guess, than the other years. So I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge our prior CFO actually started bringing the multi-year report of USFR compliance questionnaire findings as part of the audit presentation starting in 2013, and you can see the work that has been done over the years to minimize findings and to conduct training and to ensure that we have compliance with the USFR requirements.
Thank you.
Ms. Underhill?
I just want to thank you guys, and I also want to thank our admins and our, our folks in our front offices, because I know so much of that comes onto their shoulders day in and day out. So everybody's pulling together, and it sounds like we're making an improvement. So that's great. Thank you.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yeah, no, I certainly mirror, the gratitude, for your diligence, and it is about continuous improvement. I've said it before, but knowledge equals accountability. So thank you for holding yourselves accountable, reflecting and understanding, where we have opportunities, and addressing those in a timely fashion. And I will say, across the district, I know this is certainly a collective. I know there are other departments that impact the positive, momentum that we're on in this path. So really thank you to all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, President Ceja Martinez, members of the governing board, it is truly a team effort district-wide. The acknowledgement of the front office staff, teaching staff, administration, as well as the district office. It's everyone working together to ensure we're compliant. That involves ongoing training year after year, and so we're very appreciative of the support that we have from the schools as well.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I don't believe there are any more questions, comments. We are moving on to 10.4. 2019 Every Student Succeeds Act, Essa, grants, Title I budget and allocations. This has been, at least I know for me, I've been receiving a lot of emails along with our governing board, created a lot of conversation, so I look forward to hearing the presentation.
Well, thank you. Good evening again. President Ceja Martinez, members of the governing board, Superintendent Pallas Thompson, thank you for the opportunity to share information about the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is also known as Essa, and the fiscal 2019 budget allocations to the Title I schools within the Peoria Unified School District. Tonight's presentation will include an overview of Every Student Succeeds Act, as well as associated district participation and budget management. I will also review the site-based budget allocation methodology that the district uses, and I will highlight factors that were considered as the fiscal 2019 grant allocations were initially determined and communicated to the schools last year. Essa is a federal law passed in December of 2015 that governs the United States K-12 public education policy. Essa replaces the No Child Left Behind Act, and similar to the No Child Left Behind Act, Essa is a reauthorization of the 1965 Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which established the federal government's expanded role in public education. Essa went into effect in fiscal 2018 and has moved accountability to state departments of education to be responsible for the development of accountability plans to provide a quality education to all students. The purpose of Essa is to provide all children significant opportunity to receive a fair, equitable education and to close the educational achievement gap. Essa expands access to high-quality preschool, gives back to the states the power to identify the schools that need the most help, and allows states to determine how to measure student and school success and supports college and career standard readiness. Federal title funds are grants that must meet the requirements of Essa. Title I funds are targeted to high-poverty schools and districts and that are used to provide educational services to students who are educationally disadvantaged or at high risk of failing to meet state standards. Essa has provided states the opportunity to rethink their accountability systems and to redesign their systems and to set goals to emphasize multiple measures of student and school performance and success. Essa goals have to set an expectation that all groups that are furthest behind close gaps in achievement and graduation rates. I have included in tonight's presentation the slide that was recently presented at the Arizona Association of School Business Officials Winter Conference that visually provides a summary overview of Essa goals. The fiscal 2019 Title I budget allocation for the Peoria Unified School District is $5.5 million, with 58% being allocated to salaries and benefits. Title I funds are required to supplement and not to supplant other federal, state, or local education funds. They cannot take the place of these local funds. The per-pupil allocation of Title I funds to school sites is a multi-step calculation. $3.5 million of the $5.5 million fiscal 2019 allocation is available to the school sites using a per-pupil allocation methodology. The allocation to qualifying Title I schools provides each school with flexibility to meet the unique needs of the school's student population. Based on the use of data, each school's needs will be different. Site-based allocations can be used for resources, including staffing, teaching materials and programs, interventions, tutoring, and professional development. The district uses a 40% free and reduced lunch cutoff in determining Title I eligibility. Per the Elementary and Secondary Education Act as amended by Essa, 40% is the minimum poverty concentration a school can have and still run a school-wide improvement program. Free and reduced lunch populations are determined by the Food and Service Department by processing free and reduced lunch applications that are received by district families. The prior year 100th day free and reduced lunch status is used to allow for planning of the grant. Using a prior year figure allows Title I schools to be identified and planning to begin as early as possible for the next year. The free and reduced lunch percentage is calculated for each site using a formula, free plus reduced divided by total student population. 23 district schools were included in the fiscal 2019 grant application using this methodology. And as is demonstrated on the next 3 slides, the district allocated the remainder of the ADE Title I allocation to the sites on a per free and reduced lunch eligible pupil basis. This approach was used at all 23 schools, including the 3 new schools that were added in fiscal 2019 that included Copperwood Elementary, Canyon Elementary, and Ironwood High School. For fiscal 2019, in addition to the per-pupil allocations, $92,000 of additional funding from the Title I fiscal 2018 carry-forward was made available to the Title I schools in fiscal 2019 based on administration's needs assessment that was conducted last year. There were questions from the sites last year when initial allocation amounts were calculated due to the changes related to Essa, as well as the amount of site-based allocations being allocated between 23 schools instead of 20 schools, as had been the case the prior year. The increase in the denominator number reduced district-wide allocation amounts to the schools. In addition, final recommendations related to the State of Arizona single audit finding from 2013-14 had not been resolved as of last year, and the Peoria Unified District, as well as other districts, were not sure if ADE would require their funding error, when I say their funding error, meaning ADE's funding error, from 2014 to be repaid. Due to this unknown status, administration initially did not allocate 25% of the site-based funds. Arizona Department of Education did reach an agreement with the United States Department of Education, and districts that were previously overfunded will not be penalized for the ADE error back in 2014. When Peoria Unified learned of the resolution, the 25% contingency that was initially being held back was subsequently released through the site-based allocation process. This concludes the Essa Title I presentation. At this time, Dr. Bell, Chief Academic Services Officer, and I are available to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sandoval.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer, for taking us through these slides. And maybe this is a question for Dr. Bell, but, so I have a couple questions. One is in and around, I've always said it, every site has a story, right? And as we take a look at this, this list that I have from Peoria L to Raymond S. Kellis, how involved and I'm assuming it's very involved, in determining the variable needs per site, what are some of the other, partners or programs, right, that we fund through Title I? I see a listing here on a subsequent or an additional document that was emailed to us. It shows some different lines, but I guess that's my overall question. And what are some of those programming or other resources that we fund through Title I for these schools? And, are they relevant to the sites that they're tied to?
Thank you. Very good question, thank you. Each, early after probably February, we began a comprehensive needs assessment as a required component of Essa planning. Each school goes through that data process and makes some determination about their academic needs and needs associated with their campus. The decisions associated with programming, staffing, et cetera, come from the school level. And then there's conversation among administrators, like this morning, the high school administrators of Title I came together and began to talk about more consistent programming among our high schools so that we can do a better job in terms of offering programs and services to kids based upon not only the site needs, but the needs that we see across the district. We're responsible to respond to that data at the site with programs, services, tutoring, et cetera. We also have a responsibility through Anita's office to submit an integrated action plan for the district. So the data review and the comprehensive needs assessment is occurring simultaneously at each site as well as at the school district level.
Gotcha. And based on those needs, and I know, each school, based on the formula, realizes a particular dollar amount, but are there ever instances where a site has maybe more need than what's being allocated, and how do we accommodate those or address that?
Well, we do that over time. We certainly feel blessed that we have the opportunity to spread the wealth, if you will, in terms of schools that have greater needs than others across our school district. That's why we establish, at least in our minds, that 40% cutoff and then allocate based upon schools in greater need, even within the title grant. I think as we look at that, we would see that we need more attention to, say, 6th through 9th grade mathematics, K through 3 reading foundations. And so those are the decisions in working with our teams at the school and the teams here at district office, where sometimes we make a decision that would benefit all the schools if we see the data warrants that.
Gotcha. Thank you. And last question, how are we doing? And this may require, another session.
Study session.
Yeah, careful. How are we doing with regard to the goals of ESSA, right? When we take a look at third grade students reading at above grade level, how are we doing across those 4 pillars that I'm looking in front of me? Students graduate from high school ready for college and career at these sites that are our Title I schools. How are our metrics there?
The way we look at that is somewhat new in that some of the Essa expectations are different than in the past. So we are beginning to take a look at all of those metrics and measurements that actually becomes a part of that comprehensive needs assessment data review. We do those quarterly so that schools can track their progress towards those established goals that they have. And then we do them end of year or toward spring as we're starting that process now, gearing up for the first draft of each school's plan for next school year being due on May 1. In June, we will have a comprehensive data day where we will begin taking a look at where we see successes and where we need to continue to sharpen our focus.
Perfect. No, thank you for that. And again, we take a look at our mantra of every student, every day, and we have certainly a graduation rate to be proud of, but, we want to make sure that rate, certainly is applied across all of our sites, right? Or is realized across all of our sites. Thank you, Dr. Bell. Thank you. Michelle.
Ms. Pangarelli?
No comments.
Ms. Underhill?
I just had a couple things. So one thing noticed that you said that 3 additional schools were added to the allocation, amount this year. Do we see that do we have additional schools that are just at the cusp, or, do we see additional schools coming into play as our demographics are changing?
President Seahar Martinez, members of the board, there is the likelihood that as demographics change and that free and reduced percentage perhaps increases in some of our schools, that yes, you may see additional schools coming online.
And I'm just thinking, if those schools are getting close, are they also engaged in those conversations about what's working and, what are we doing and what resources are we buying so that they can be prepared and ready?
Yes, I think one important thing to note about the addition of schools, because they are predominantly high schools over time, is that there is a belief in terms of planning and looking comprehensively at K-12 programming in Title I schools, that once your feeder pattern schools, or in our case, our K-8 elementary, become qualified for Title I services, programs, et cetera, then the feeder high school is likely at some point to qualify based upon their free and reduced lunch percentages. With that, we try to do some vertical teaming so that the high school teams and the K-8 teams at each school are working and planning together. So we have a comprehensive and connected, aligned set of programs and services that are needed based upon our data.
That's great. Just one other little thing that I wanted to ask about was the use of the instructional coach model. I know that a portion of the district set aside goes to pay for instructional coaches. It's pretty significant. And I just wondered, can you just explain the role of kind of the instructional coach model within this budget?
We've changed that up just this past year. There's been, they've always supported new teachers across our district. I was asked to take a look at that programming and reduce cost. So at this point, all of our instructional coaches assigned to sites are funded by Title I schools.
Okay.
They're placed in those schools based upon a set of criteria, their performance, how many beginning teachers they have, if they have a beginning principal or beginning administrative team, and then finally, if there's a special program that may need particular attention at that site. An example of that is Santa Fe, the Spanish immersion program. Those instructional coaches are dispersed. They're either full-time or half-time in those schools based upon those sets of criteria. They assist not only in modeling lessons and beginning teacher classrooms, providing support, they've also become an integral part of the school support or school data team and school improvement team associated with looking at data, working with teachers in a collaborative effort around PLCs to move the school forward, helping teachers develop common formative assessments to regularly assess students to understand who got it and who didn't, and then what we're going to do in our response to that. So they're not, this year, we're expanding their role to provide more support to that system of school improvement at the site.
That's great. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, thank you for all the information. Let me just start with knowing that the regulations for Essa we're trying to decipher how we're going to present essentially transparency to our district. There are other states there are all districts across the nation that have already put on their website per pupil spending for every school where every dollar is accountable. And so I would like our district to continue to look at that so that when our community goes to our website, they see a visual. As much as I have the time to look over this, it may not be easy on the eyes or for our community to understand of where per pupil spending. Specifically, we talk about in our district the difference between Title I schools and a higher SES, socioeconomic schools, that there's difference. But what you have presented here is Title I schools under the same umbrella And we do need a study session on this information, because if you look at the total operating expenses for each school site, and I took two specific schools that had the same student ratio and the amount that they were given, there was a difference from school A to school B, about $46.96. Then I took it and correlated to the AZ merit scores, and I tread lightly because we know that standardized test does not tell the whole story. But when I took a look at these two schools, even though one school A received more money, school B had a better performance. I took the same schools, school A and school B, and I aligned it to the weekly suspension reports. And the school that received less money had a better outcome, a reduced rate from 2018 to 2019 suspension reports. So when we continue to discuss as a governing board and we look at our instructional models and we look at the behavior, the money is supposed to address at-risk students. We really need to have a serious conversation what evidence we're using to determine, other than graduation rates, are we reducing those risks for those high-need students? What metrics are we measuring success with? A standardized test is not going to tell the whole story, but suspension reports may tell a different story. Are we approving the travel stipends for our administrators and our teachers for the right training programs to meet these Title I schools? So thank you for indulging me in all the emails and the back and forth conversation, but this is definitely something we need to add on a study session to dive deep. And every school is not going to be the same, but we need to look at this information in more depth.
Mrs. Essa Martinez, members of the board, I certainly appreciate your comments. I've shared when asked, Peoria Unified, in addition to all Arizona public school districts, will be required in fiscal 2020 to have school-level expenditure reporting. We're going to see our AFR changing. And in fact, at the Arizona Association of School Business Officials Winter Conference, there was a session talking about Essa and providing examples of states that have actually already gone online with this more detailed reporting, and they have toolkits out there, and all Arizona district schools are moving toward that type of additional reporting. And under Essa, it's interesting to note that with the required changes, there's also now coordination between the academic side of the house and the business services side of the house and a district strategic plan. That's actually one of the requirements. So in the continuing education arena with school business officials, there is training. We're moving toward that, and you're going to see additional reporting as required moving forward.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any additional comments? Okay. Thank you. 10.5, I do apologize, and we did this before. Governing board, we have an administration appointment, and we should have moved it to the front, so we'll have to keep our eyes on. Thank you, Dr. Carter Davidson. 10.5, discuss and consideration of administrative appointment. I was wondering why the audience was so large, and then it dawned on me. So I apologize to the families that had to stay with us through this conversation, but Dr. Davidson, please.
Yeah. Thank you, President Essa Martinez, members of the board, Ms. Powles-Thompson. Tonight, again, it always is a great pleasure to come before you and highlight an individual that's being brought to you for recommendation as one of our assistant principals at Desert Harbor Elementary School. So certainly I learned from last time. I'd like to make a recommendation for a motion, please, and then based upon your vote, then introduce the individual and allow her to stand for any questions. So tonight, with your approval, we would like to recommend that the board allow Ms. Janae Hutchinson to serve as assistant principal at Desert Harbor Elementary School for the remainder of this school year and moving into the future.
Do we have a motion? I move to approve the recommendation to have Ms. Hutchinson be appointed the assistant principal at Desert Harbor Elementary.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, go ahead and cast your vote. Motion passes 4-0, one absent. Dr. Davidson.
Very good, and thank you for your support, Governing Board. On behalf of Mrs. Hutchison, before I invite her up, I'll just share a few words about her. She has recently served as a fifth grade teacher at Desert Harbor Elementary School, starting in 2007. Since 2002, Mrs. Hutchison has also served as a teacher at Alta Loma Elementary School. Mrs. Hutchinson holds both a Master's in Educational Leadership and a Bachelor's of Science degree from Northern Arizona University. Tonight, she's accompanied by her husband, Travis, who happens to be an educator at Liberty, so thank you for your service, sir, as well as our principal of Desert Harbor, Miss Becky Burhow. So, Mrs. Hutchinson, if you want to come on up, please.
First time up here. So, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Linda Pallas-Thompson, it's an honor. I am excited to work alongside an amazing principal and serve my Desert Harbor community that I've been a part of for the last 13 years in a different capacity. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much for stepping up and taking that leadership role. I was told today that sometimes being in a leadership position, it's a lonely position, but I guarantee you, having the opportunity to meet your principal, you are not alone at Desert Harbor.
Definitely not.
Any additional comments by the governing board?
I just want to say congratulations. Desert Harbor is near and dear to my heart. Our daughters graduated, went to Desert Harbor under Mrs. Little, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations. It's, I know you said it was an honor to be up here, but it's certainly our honor to be in front of you, greatness, right? Individual who impacts the lives of many. So looking forward to you taking that passion to this leadership level, and not only inspiring your students, but inspiring those individuals who, who you will be over, if you will, from a leadership perspective. So thank you again for taking on that challenge, and thank you for all that you do for our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one last thing. I just want to say, first of all, it's awesome that you're going to be able to lead the school where you've been. I think that's going to be a huge advantage, and you have a great team and a great school. And second, thank you to your husband for putting up with us on Valentine's Day. You guys should have said something. So go enjoy. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Dr. Davidson to 10.6, discussion of employee health benefits for 2019-2020 school year.
Very good. Thank you again, President Sal Martinez, members of the board, Ms. Pallas-Thompson. Tonight, I bring to you a recommendation, and certainly I don't believe this is a voting item tonight, but would seek any feedback that you have in regards to the employee benefits that we'd like to offer for the 1920 school year. This information is not just really brought by myself. It's on behalf of Ms. Davis as well, who serves as our manager of our benefits and compensation programs. However, she is unable to attend this evening's conversation. Also, please note this information has been passed through, and we have sought input from our budget team as well. So just wanted to share with you that information as we get started. The first slide just really highlights the gist of the conversation. As you can see, we do expect a 4.2% increase to our medical premiums on behalf of our district expenditures. We do ask and recommend that that be absorbed by our, how should I say, that excess that we have with our Valley Schools account, and that's why you can see here that we do recommend no additional cost to our employees for the 1920 school year. And also, as we present just a few pieces of information, this information you had seen earlier in the fall, it's not all that removed. We're going to be asking to continue to offer the same plan designs regarding medical, vision, and dental benefits to our employees. The next few slides really just highlight the employee portion of our medical premiums. And we have 4 different offerings that I'm going to highlight here. One is the employee-only offerings, and you can see here that we offer 3 different plans to our employees for medical benefits. And this one here for the employee-only rate, you can see the different cost that the employee would have to pay to have that particular program. As you can see, the buy-up or the HDHP, high deductible health plan, the buy-up, as well as the base, there is 0 cost to the employee. And if they wanted the traditional PPO, it would be at $86.80 a month. While I'm speaking, I'm just kind of monitoring my audience. If you have any questions during the conversation, feel free to get me right away instead of waiting to the end, okay? All right. We continue on, and I can probably push through these, and we're just highlighting the cost to the employees for the different offerings. This one you see here is for employee and spouse. This would be if you have an employee plus children. Again, please note this is a per month rate for our employees. Lastly, we have employee and family, and actually I lied, it's not lastly, here's our last one here, which is the dual family. We do offer a significant change in cost if there is an employee and also they work with their spouse to provide coverage, and that's why you can see the difference there. As we move into the dental and vision portion of the presentation, I'm going to highlight that we do have two dental options for our employees. One is through Delta Dental and one is through Cigna. The Cigna one is more of what I would call the foundational product, and the Delta Dental is one that does cost a little bit more for our employees but offers greater opportunity for the dentist in which they choose to visit. We also have our vision coverage. There is a change in the carrier this year, but it was done on behalf of our employees to provide them greater opportunities in a different network. Also, our employees asked for ID cards as they go to get their vision checked. Minor concern, but certainly wanted to address that. And the vision service through the United Healthcare came in better for our employees. No rate increase there. You'll see that in the next few slides as we look at our Delta and DHMO plans, okay? You can see here there is no rate increase on these two options. Vision premiums remain the same as they were last year, just a different carrier. We also offer a variety of supplemental coverages for employees. We did not put any particular cost here because the cost will depend on what items our employees choose. But you can see here we do have the flexible health spending account. We offer Info Armor, which is a identity protection type of scenario for our employees. There's no rate increase, and we do not charge our employees. We do, individual employees can select that product with no cost to the employee. We also offer our EAPs, employee benefit programs, where if you need some additional help and support, we offer that two different options to our employees there. And you can see here, we also offer a variety of supplemental insurance opportunities for our employees.
I'm going to jump in here on this slide because I had a question, and this is a good model to align to my question. So looking at our total compensation that we offer our staff, and I was going to refer it almost like a cafeteria plan, but what you just described on this slide, it aligns to that statement because the employees get to choose if they want to participate, and if they do, then it's an additional cost that it's deducted from their paycheck,
yes,
correct? So when we look at benefits, our governing board has continuously said, top of mind, how can we help retain?
Yep.
How can we reduce health benefit costs on the employer? It sounds to me that after our last governing board roundtable with Valley Schools, that bucket of money, roughly $22 million off the top of my head, is going to be used to be applied to maintain costs.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Or my hope, yes, ma'am.
That's what it sounds like. But another way to consider is like a cafeteria plan. Have we considered giving a list of options for individual employees to determine what they want in their total compensation package? For example, do they even want dental? Do they want paid time off, life insurance, health benefits? And if they don't want them, then we deduct them from their total allotted dollars that we're going to give as compensation, and then the difference be applied to their base pay. Has that type of conversation come up?
Certainly. President Sam Martinez, members of the board, Ms. Powell Thompson, I have not led a conversation like that. President Sam Martinez, I do believe that we are responsible for offering a quality product to our employees. And as you heard when the Valley Schools presenters were here, they guide us, so to speak, but we certainly have options within that scenario. I know that working with Ms. Myers and our budget team and hoping to get some information back that we have yet to really fully dive into in terms of that as you talked about it, Ms. Sayha Martinez, that total compensation package, I do believe that's certainly a conversation we could have in the future as we look at our total resources. We had talked earlier in the year about reaching out to our employees to hear their voice. I believe with what we're doing with our compensation study, we didn't feel like we had the time to fully commit to that, because at least I know on behalf of our team, once we ask for information, we probably should do something with that information, and we just simply didn't have the time to push forward on an initiative with that magnitude, but it's certainly not a bad idea.
It's definitely some information I would like to know, because I would like to know if the staff would even consider, if they don't use those services and we're paying for them, or if it's part of the compensation that Valley Schools offers, and we remove that service and we can add it to their base pay, I wonder if they would consider adding more to their base pay and forego some of those other options that we give them. So it's pro-choice in regards to total benefit compensation package.
Yeah, and I like it. I mean, I think, their spouse could have a better vision plan or a dental plan, and, they kind of look at both options, right, and determine who selects what for their health benefits as a family. One of the things that you said, though, it's certainly our role as a district to make sure that our associates have just world-class health benefits. And this may not be appropriate in this conversation, but I know we've had it a few times, and I believe, Michelle, you might have answered the question via email, but I do still believe that right now, we don't have anything to compare it to, the Valley Schools package versus some other options that may be out there, right? They may have the best, absolute best offerings that one could offer, to a district. But again, I still believe that, every 3-5 years that we should, take a quick look and see what else is out there. And if they have the best deal, then that's great. But again, without nothing to compare it to other than their word, and I know part of the role is to, continue to look and make sure they're always looking at ways to save our associates' dollars. I agree with Ms. Sayha Martinez that, as part of one of the ways that we can certainly show our associates that we value them is not becoming complacent with regard to their benefits. So, again, I know it's a future conversation, but I do believe that we should go out and for an RFP and see what else is out there.
And Mr. Sandoval, I appreciate you acknowledging Ms. Myers too. I do appreciate the fact that she was able to respond to that question clearly and kind of let you know how that process would look and the time frame it would take to do that. But I believe your voice is heard. Yes, sir.
Ms. Underhill.
I guess I would just say that I concur with what the two of you are saying, in that, if we're looking at a total compensation package, like I, for one, did not elect to have benefits when I was working for the district because I got them through my husband, but then I was missing out on a piece of that compensation. So, and I know you'd have to look at minimums and all of that, and it'd be but I think it's definitely worth, that, because we do want to offer overall value to the folks that we want to attain and attract and retain, sorry. So I think that's definitely worthwhile, and especially if we have this sort of fund balance continually rolling forward, if there's ways to utilize that in that sort of methodology, that'd be great too. So thank you, and thank you for your work on this.
So on behalf of this presentation, what I'd like to do is next board meeting come to you for an actual vote, because we would like, on behalf of our budget team, be able to move this process forward at least for the 1920 school year.
Definitely, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, too.
Okay, moving on to 10.7, discussion and review of governing board policy GCQC, liquidated damages. I'm going to start off. I move to terminate any language associated with liquidated damages from GCQC policy. Do I have a second? I tried. Okay, so there's no second to.
Sorry, I'm just.
Okay.
I just have a lot of thoughts rolling around in my head.
So generally, what we have decided is with Robert's rules, we would make a motion. If somebody seconds it, then we would open up the floor for
Okay.
discussion.
Okay.
If nobody seconds it, then the motion fails, and then we proceed with the next motion. If there is a motion on the floor and a second, then we can make the amendment. Is that correct, Ms. Bouchon? Yes. So the original motion I made out of the gate is I move to terminate any language associated with liquidated damages from GCQC policy. So if we wanted to continue with that, then I would need a second. And Mr. Sandoval's not here, so.
Can we start discussion then?
So then, yes, and the motion doesn't go on, so then, so I made a motion, but I need a second, and if it doesn't get a second, then it fails. So I move to terminate any language associated with liquidated damages from policy GCQC. And we're waiting on a second. For the motion that I just made. And if it's not agreeable, it sounds like motion failed. So then I need a new motion as however you governing board members want to proceed.
I would prefer discussion
Okay.
over making motions, and then we can have an idea of, and Mrs. Underhill has not been a part of this, and to hear what she has to say.
Okay. All right. I'm more than happy to entertain the conversation. To give you some background, we've brought this policy up. This policy derived in 2012, and it basically states that if an employee of the district, based on the criteria, their specific criteria does not qualify for, they would be assessed what we refer to as a damage. And depending on if they're administrator or teacher, then the amounts differ. Last year, the policy stayed the exact same, but there was a vote for the majority to reduce the amounts per each group of employees. So we have decided to bring this policy back again to discuss how we want to move forward. This is a cyclical thing. We have contracts up for vote real soon, so we have to address this as soon as possible, so we give direction to our administration to move forward. Did I get it all?
And I just want to say the dollar amount was, it dropped by $1,000. So it went from 3 to 2 for administrators, and from 25 to 1,500 for certified.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so who wants to start the conversation?
Yeah, I think for me, and you know, when you take a look at this policy, and you know, I think it certainly what Ms. Pringarelli just brought up. You know, certainly, you know, proud to be a part of that. You know, reducing the dollar amount, you know, across the board by $1,000. But is it perfect? You know, does it need some adapting to really be less of a punitive measure and really show that we value our associates? You know, I think the answer to that is yes. And I think, you know, I have a couple thoughts that I'd like to kind of throw out there and discuss around this. And one component directly applies to, you know, this policy is, you know, potentially taking a look at, you know, a scalable penalty, if you will, or liquidated damage, meaning, well, let me take a quick step back. I mean, we ask our teachers to sign their contracts by the end of March. And Dr. D, please correct me as I go through this chronological discussion. But what I'd like to see is, and I get that. I understand that we want to understand our staffing levels for the subsequent year as a district. But so our teachers don't feel, you know, held hostage as a result, I'd like to see a grace period that may last for about 45 days beyond that contract signing, meaning from April to maybe May 15th, where if there is another opportunity that they maybe had in mind or that they want to move to or have an opportunity to move, that they are not, you know, assess these damages during that window. Now, to go beyond that for maybe another 45 days, maybe it's scalable, right? So it's a less dollar amount from, May 16th through the end of June, and then, or maybe through July, and then it kind of scales to its max penalty, I guess. And I hate using the term penalty, but kind of scales to its max value, right? So, so as we get into the school year, now it gets back to the point where it's at now, right? I do feel that, it does support our teachers and students, because I think, during the year, when a teacher does leave a classroom, it does add an additional burden to their counterparts, especially when we're talking about, our core classes, math, science, et cetera, right? And I think it even has a parental impact as well. When the parents and students have a connection with their teacher, that connection is one that's invaluable, and that certainly influences success, for their student. So that said, I'd like to see a grace period after they sign the contract, and I'd like to consider a scalable thought leading up to, its max value.
Ms. Underhill?
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about this as well, and I do see the challenges for the district, when a staff leaves, because, we feel it when we're teaching in the classroom and our colleagues are out for a couple days, So I understand that is a challenge, and also that there's a cost in recruiting employees and that kind of thing. And most importantly, it's a challenge for our students, because they're the ones that are, without a teacher and potentially with multiple teachers, and I've seen it, at my own kids' school, and it definitely does present a challenge. That said, I also understand the tenuous position that we're in recruiting and retaining top staff, especially with our teacher shortage in the state. Additionally, adding to that is the fact that our salary level at this point is not necessarily, jumping out in front of our peer districts or our surrounding districts. So the fact that families are having to kind of look around, it makes sense, and there are a lot of individual situations where an individual spouse may lose their job after they've signed their contract, and they have to go for, the $10,000 additional dollars, even if they have to drive 45 minutes away. Also, there's sort of some limited professional growth options within our district right now. You can do it, but you have to pay for it on your own, and the bump is not necessarily significant. So I guess just with that, and with, kind of every district's challenge in providing educational resources and increasing needs of kids, I think, like, right now, to me, this doesn't necessarily, I'm not inclined to believe that having a liquidated damages clause is helpful for us. But I do understand it in the way of trying to protect the district. So I'm kind of the vein that we need to either do away with it, or we need to make it more workable for our teachers, and that they do have a grace period, and that it is a graduated or some kind of system, potentially like what Mr. Sandoval was talking about. But more than that, I really think that we need to figure out what it is that is causing teachers to want to leave, and what can we do as a district to make sure that we're creating the working conditions and, the needs for advancement that they need in order to come and stay. And maybe that means that we need to have some sort of a process that is where we're engaging a broader kind of swath of our employee base to help define these policies. So I guess, long story short, I don't know that this policy is helping us that much. I don't know, and we don't have data, I don't think, from prior to when this was implemented, how many people, I don't know if we know if it has changed the numbers of folks that breach their contract. But that's just kind of where I stand on it, that, we got to make sure that we're transforming our organization to make people want to stay, rather than just looking at kind of short-term, how can we keep them here, especially if they don't want to be or cannot do the job that they've taken. So that's kind of where I'm at. Not very definitive, but.
Ms. Pangarelli?
Well, I wanted to start first with a few questions, and then I do have data. Dr. Davidson, there is a cost to onboard teachers or admin.
Certainly, yes, ma'am.
Do you know what that cost is for our district?
I don't have a particular dollar figure. I believe there is data out there that was suggested as a certain percentage of the person's salary. 25% is what I believe I've seen before.
One other area is like 12,500.
Yeah, and then I was thinking 25%, that should be roughly close to the salary of a typical new teacher and their benefits, Ms. Pingree.
Okay.
So I think you and I are speaking the same language there. Certainly, there's a cost to manpower, right? There's a cost to time, cost to resources. As Mr. Sandoval pointed out, the cost to the relationship that's being built with peers, with supervisors, with community.
All right. The last time we met and talked about this was a little over a year ago. At that time, you gave your opinion on past experiences. As an HR director, can you share those with us again?
Certainly, and I don't know, we couldn't really communicate that very well in an email, but, the question often that we've had, from some of our board members is, well, does it make a difference? Is it making a difference? Is it really helping us retain, or is it even having our employees choose to stay because of the dollar figure that's in their contract? And in my opinion, I can't, kind of like Ms. Underhill there, I'm going to be really broad. I can't tell you that it does or doesn't, but what I know that it does do in working closely with Ms. Vesley, who is here, when we meet with our employees that need to seek other employment opportunities, one, I believe our employees really have to think about what does it mean, not just from a financial scenario, but what does it mean to my career as it relates to leaving my children behind and impacting my school, right? I think our employees do think long and hard about that. The conversations that we've had over the last few years are very dynamic, in some cases very hard, because the variables that are in the life of an educator, in the life of a person, are just gigantic, right? You don't know when someone loses their job. You don't know when someone passes away. You don't know when someone's on food stamps. I mean, we've heard it all, and so it's very meaningful. That conversation is difficult and makes a difference in how we try to proceed with our employees. But what I do know is in HR, we have to be very consistent. And in our current policy, we don't have a lot of wiggle room. So that is what I know. I also can share with you that our employees, that the numbers that I've shared with you, it ranges from 21 to 23 to 20 to now 11 to date that we've had to charge liquidated damages over the last, 3+ school years. At least over the last 2 years, I'd have to say, and Laura, if I'm missing something, correct me here, but our employees understand where we're coming from, even those that are seeking their promotion. You've heard from a few over the last few years. They're not necessarily happy because it is a financial hit, but they understand it, and they work alongside us. And I certainly am appreciative of that.
Thank you. And I know the answer to this one. Does a teacher or administrator breaking their contract affect others around him that have to take up their slack? No matter where they break it, if it's in the first month or if it's the last 2 weeks?
100%, of course. Yes, ma'am.
Could we state that if they stayed, the environment would be just as impactful, negatively impacted because of the work that the staff around them has to pick up the slack as well, if they stayed as well?
So you're saying that they wouldn't be professional and wouldn't be able to do their job if they're unhappy and they're forced to stay?
I would say that student success is not their priority, and I will throw myself under that bus. When I chose, and I use myself every time, and when I chose to stay here with the district, I was not the best performer.
Okay.
And the impact to my staff, I would have to ask them. In 2006, this board changed the policy that if you don't use your time, you had to lose your time. So I made sure that I used all my time out. So not only did I incur a cost to the district, they had to take an additional cost for a substitute for keeping me here. So we could argue both sides of the fact that the teacher does do, or the administrator, the staff member who stays here, who leaves, will have an impact negatively to the district. We can also state that if they stay behind, that impact could be just as harmful. And the process and the man hours or woman hours for an administrator to document and to have somebody exit this district, is it worth the $1,500?
Well, I believe that teachers and administrators should be able to resolve their differences. If they can't, then maybe we would need other administrators.
I definitely agree with that statement. I believe, but it's not the I believe, it's the impact that we're having to student success. And we would all agree that student success is our priority. And if we were to have data, we pride ourselves on data, that we had data that a teacher that stayed in their contract would have a great outcome on our students, I would say yes. Put liquidated damages so they stay in that spot. But there is no data to prove that she's going to have our students outperform or drive growth if she stays or he stays or that person stays in a contract that they don't want to be here.
Well, I mean, one of the arguments is that we're not treating certified members as professionals, okay? But you're saying that they won't act professional if they're forced to stay in their contract.
I'm not saying that they won't act. What you stated was you believe, and we can say both sides what potential situations, but we have to quantify is the effort and time that we put in man hours, calculate to and translate to the liquidated damages and the impact on student achievement.
Well, right now, we have a lot of third graders that can't even read at grade level. So instead of challenging this policy, what I would rather be talking about now is student achievement.
Exactly. So
And
why do we have teachers?
I think that we're looking at this as a business. Okay, we're not looking at this as representing one organization or one group. Okay, I don't come here representing teachers or administrators. I come here representing the community. And what the community wants is they want a stable district. Okay, and that, I believe, is what liquidated damages brings.
I guess-
I'm sorry. Okay, so in terms of the data, I did find the Arizona Daily Star in August 2016 analyzed two different school districts, Sunnyside, which had no liquidated damages, and I know we talked about this before, and TUSD, Tucson Unified School District, which had liquidated damages. They both had about the same number of teachers break their contract, except TUSD serves 47,000 students, and Sunnyside serves a third of it. So you're looking at a side by side, it did work. They did say, though, that the harshness of liquidated damages wasn't as much to play, but if you didn't have it at all, it did make a difference. And I
think what we want to do, and I get both sides, because like I say, I know that our job is to protect the district, and the district is our teachers and our kids, so we're trying to do that. I think that looking at a compromise that could potentially relieve some of the pressure for staff from having to sign at that moment and know that that's it, they owe $1,500 if they change their mind or something happens, and possibly looking at either whether it be a grace period or a graduated type payment policy, which other districts have put into place. I saw an article from just Apache Junction not too far ago. That could be a compromise that we could work with to see, and as we continue to track our data over time, see, does this really, making a difference or not? And also asking staff. I don't know, that we've necessarily had, conversation with staff about their feelings on this whole piece. If I was a staff member, I care about the district too. I don't want to just, see the district fold because we're losing teachers, which means our kids aren't doing well, which means, but I think that we need to listen to them as well. And I guess I just feel like, we have an opportunity for compromise here. We have an opportunity for maybe a graduated plan to see how that works. And then potentially we can move on, next year, go another direction since it is a cyclical type process.
All right, well, go ahead.
Sorry, Ms. Springarelli, but so Dr. I agree with inquiring with the staff. I think because we're sitting here without really any true empirical data around, if it makes a difference to have it or keeping a staff member in that seat. by kind of holding them hostage, right? So we don't have that knowledge, but inquiring with our teachers, around this policy, I think would be invaluable information for us to have to truly make a global informed decision. One comment I do want to make, though, and I think, and I've seen this in some of the assessments where we've made a decision as a district to actually accept someone's resignation, if you will, and waive those damages because we felt as a district that whether it be their mindset, would be a detriment, to the classroom. So we've made those conscious decisions as a district, correct?
Yes, sir, and I was just scrolling down on the policy, Mr. Sandoval, there, that paragraph where it talks about additionally the governing board may waive, that's where that language is found.
Okay, so we have that opportunity. So if we feel that a classroom is going to be negatively impacted by keeping somebody in that seat, we can make the decision, look, this just isn't working out. Our goal is to make sure that all of our students are put in a position to be successful. We accept your resignation, and we don't assess the damages, right?
Yes, sir. May I also comment on the comment you had, Mr. Sandoval, on the data set there?
Yeah.
And on reaching out to their staff. I do believe sometimes data can tell a story, right, of how our staff believes or how based on their actions, right? And if you recall that data we did send in the email, when you look at, and we shared this earlier in the fall as well, where it's roughly 13% of our staff we have lost, from a teaching standpoint, have lost each year over the last 3 years. But with that being said, the number of people that are charged liquidated damages also remains very consistent. 21, 23, 20, 11 to date.
Right.
So I guess I do believe there is some data from our staff that says, hey, it seems at least, and I want to change that number. I'm not happy with 13%. I'd like it to be a lot less.
Sure.
But you do have people that say, you know what, maybe this isn't where I want to be. This isn't where I want to have my career. I'm going to go do other things. They don't get assessed because they choose to not accept their contract. They're willing to let it ride and see what happens, or tell us, as we're doing now in staffing conversations, you know what, we're not coming back. So I guess, that being said, I feel like I just wanted to point that out, that there is a data set out there that tells this story that, for the most part, our employees do know what's going on. And I guess I would add to that, as it relates to the number charged, many of these individuals are making that choice, and I don't know if even honestly, if the liquidated damages was $5,000, would that cause them to make a different choice? When they're choosing to do that, it's usually a significant reason.
Right.
When they're choosing to break that contract. So, to Ms. Underhill's point, we have numerous districts that have liquidated damages. I know one very close to us that has a graduated scale. I know one just down the road that has no liquidated damages, and I just share with you, sitting across the table from them, we all are experiencing the same issues and difficulties as it relates to retaining and supporting our staff and letting them out when they need to. We're all working through the same stuff.
Yeah, and I guess for me, when I take a look at some of the reasoning why individuals decide to move, and it seems to be more often than not that it's because they're wanting to graduate into higher levels and other roles that may not be available here, right? Which is certainly admirable, and we hang our hat on the fact that we were able to develop them to be confident and move up to those levels. So that said, I would like to see a scaled approach to this, where, again, because of the fact that we asked them to sign their contract so soon. So my proposal is this, that, from, contract signing to May 15th, no damages, but from May 15th to maybe the end of June, it's half, $750 on the certified or teacher side, and the admin side goes to one. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And then after that, it goes up, back to its max value, if you will. But I know that might be two different policies, because I'm asking to offer a grace period. Can that grace period be inputted here from contract signing? Could that be part of this policy, meaning have a grace period? Yeah, I guess it could be, right?
You can make a motion
So the
however you
motion
like.
would be to, include in this policy
Right.
That, from, end of March to May 15th, that it's 50% of the value of the liquidated damages. And then after where did I go? End of March, we're going in April. So mid-May, May 16th to June 30th, it's 50% of the value, but no assessed damages from contract signing to May 15th. But then after June 30th, it goes up to its, max value, I guess.
Can I say a few other things?
Ms.
Do we-
Pingerelli?
I was still discussing.
So, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to experiment with our students. I see no issues with the liquidated damages that we have right now. We've lowered them $1,000, which in our past discussions seem to have helped a great deal. So I would like to make a motion, if you hadn't officially made one, to keep the liquidated damages the same at $1,500 for certified and $2,500 for admin. I don't want to experiment with something that's working out right now with 1% of teachers being dinged the liquidated damages. And out of those, which was 60-some in 3 years, we've seen a handful. So I don't see an issue with the policy. I think it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the floor.
Deb's motion.
Is there a second? Motion fails. Is there another motion?
Yes, I would like to move that we have a grace period from the end of March through May 15th, where there will be no damages assessed. And then May 16th through the end of June, half the value of those damages if you break the contract. And then beyond that, it goes back to its normal value.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Sandoval and a second by Ms. Underhill. Did you get all that information, Ms. Bouchon? Okay. We'll do a voice vote. We'll do a roll call. Ms. Underhill?
Aye.
Ms. Pingerelli?
Nay.
Myself, nay. Mr. Sandoval? Aye. Motion fails. It's 2-2. So we're back to square one. I move to terminate any language associated with liquidated damages from policy GCQC. Do I have a second? Okay, we're stuck.
Can I, yeah, and that failed, correct?
Yep, so we're,
Okay, so, but what I'm hearing, and I'm just going to jump in for a second, a couple things. Number one, Mrs. Pingerelli is 100% right with respect to, we should be talking about a student achievement. And if we're talking about, this fits under stewardship, but it also, more importantly, fits under this thing called student achievement. So as you're looking at it, the conversations that are being debated, and I would say nobody's wrong right now at all. There's a viewpoint for everybody on here. But student achievement is number one. So as we're looking at this, the impact is, one way or the other, what is impacting student achievement. Stewardship is there, but the amount of money is not necessary. I know every penny counts, but that's really not the issue. It's student achievement. I think we could use, and we can go back and forth. I know we keep on bringing this one back up. This is the first one on my watch that has been brought up. I know it's hard to believe, but this is the first time I've been part of the discussion on the dais. And so what I would recommend is that there is a little bit more data as we're looking at this thing one more time. We don't, Mr. Davidson, Dr. Davidson, we don't ask our people when that are leaving, say at the end of this year, why did you wait to leave? Okay, did the liquidated damages keep you from leaving? That would be one concept to be asking. So you retired now, you didn't retire, you decided to leave the profession. Did this thing deter you? And get some more data on that. I think we can use it. Is it coming from certain schools where the leadership, to your point, Mrs. Pangarelli, is not really saying, hey, what do we got here? Why are you leaving? We do have also in the policies I'm looking that I really didn't see before, the opportunity for us to, if somebody's performance is failing, so, okay, I'm staying because I'm stuck with this, we should be able to say, just like we would when we're terminating somebody or making an agreement, you are leaving, don't expect to be coming back to the district. So contract is a contract. I understand that. I understand it's a right-to-work state, and I understand there's a contract, and I understand bad performance. If the performance is poor, I would like to see if there's something in our law, in our policy that says you will not be rehired for mediocre performance as you're going through. But the focus, again, needs to be on student achievement. Certainly, this board can make an informed decision based around the issue of student achievement more than anything else. So the data I believe we have to collect is more data that says, what is the impact? What is the impact of some of these people who are leaving? They left anyway. What did we do with the money when we got it?
I will turn that over to Ms. Myers.
Is it just in a fund
But I
somewhere?
believe it remains as part of our M&O account, our Fund 001. I would believe it's salary and benefits. No, Michelle?
No,
This would be one of those things that be very interested to see how we can solve it, where we can all walk away. It's really not a political conversation. This is definitely an educational achievement piece, and I think that's what you're all arguing on, with respect to achievement. So
Yeah, no,
keep on going.
Can I,
mean, it's,
I have one question. I just
Go
had one question. Dr. Davison, so in previous years, we've gotten a sign-on bonus if we sign by a certain time. Is that practice going to continue?
I don't believe yet that our budget team has weighed in on that final decision. I think that was going to be part of the total compensation conversation.
Okay.
Ms. Underhill.
I guess I'm just thinking trying to make sure that we are providing a, hospitable environment for our staff who are our community and, who I know are dedicated to student achievement, that if we're not offering that and we're not offering anything else,
Right.
that we need to consider that as well. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and real quick, and I mean, I think we would all agree it's about student achievement without question, right? But I would like to broaden the I guess, interviewees, if you will, if we're going to send out a survey to understand kind of an exit interview, right? But I would cast, the question around this policy, across our teachers, not just those that have exited, but those that are currently with us, right? I think it would be interesting to understand, their feedback on this as well.
And I'm sorry, one other point, Carter, if you're looking at it, I don't see a problem with, I don't know if these are first, second, third, or 10th year teachers that we're talking about.
Ms. Pallas Thompson, I think you can say it's a little bit of everybody, to be honest with you. I don't think it's, and again, Ms. Vesely, would you agree? It's a wide array of individuals, different types of experiences, coming from other places. As Mr. Sandoval pointed out, and that's some of those people, you've seen people that have an aspiration for a different type of job in the educational field, or someone who is going to work for a private company that's simply just looking to make more money. So it's a little bit of everything.
To add to Mr. Sandoval's inclusive feedback, and to Ms. Pangarelli's point, community. During our parent survey, what do they think about the liquidated damages? It's their tax dollars. Should we uphold a policy as such and get their feedback from our stakeholders who essentially are fronting the bill. The other thing is the social media impact when somebody does leave an assessed liquidated damages. Is it all over Glassdoor? We recruit outside this state, and first people, if we're looking at business best practices or how people look at where do I want to work, they get on LinkedIn, they get on Glassdoor, they look at social media sites and say, okay, what are they saying about this school district? And if there's any verbiage about liquidated damages, we could be losing 5 excellent teachers because of this one liquidated damage assess. So if we're going to include all those voices and research and data, look at student achievement, look at community feedback, what do they want? And then social media, what does it say about our district? Because that's the culture we're creating. So at this point, motion fails, policy stands until we get more data and communicate to the employees that this policy stands, and we support our administration making those decisions, and if coming forward in front of the board, we will uphold our policy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So real quick, I guess as far as timing,
You can bring this back at,
Well, I think we need to have the information, the feedback, right? How much time do you need?
Mr. Sandoval, members of the governing board, President Sam Martinez, I think for us, as you know, we issue our contracts electronically. Often, if our employees provide comments or feedback as to the why they are choosing not to sign, Ms. Vesley, myself, or other team members do respond to them. So certainly, I think that can be an emphasis for us, is if we do get either a lack of response or someone saying no thank you, we can certainly reach out to them to try to seek some feedback regarding liquidated damages. That would be an easy step one for us. If I could have some information to you from that perspective by the end of the school year.
Dr. Davidson, I just had one other question. So when the employee signs the contract, they need to fulfill that contract until the end date. What happens, what is our responsibility to the employee? Do they have a guaranteed job during that time?
From contract issuance
From our point of a district, they have a job.
Yes,
during
ma'am.
during their period of time.
Yes, ma'am, they do. Now, again, I can give you a really broad answer to that, but yes, ma'am, they are entitled to a job. It may be at a different grade level if the educational needs of that school demanded that. It might be at a different site even, if we had to. There's certainly a variety of variables that play into that, but certainly we would honor that FTE, full-time equivalence in that contract.
Okay, so this is a business decision, and I don't need to make my decision, hear what the staff would have to say, because they're guaranteed a job during that contract. So I don't need the input that they don't want liquidated damages, because it's a win-win for the employees. And from my perspective, we are looking at maintaining stability for the students. So I would assume that staff would say, no, we don't want liquidated damages. I would assume 100% would say that. So.
I believe our contract says that they're guaranteed a job, kind of. Right? That it says there's a job unless there isn't, unless we have to cut back or.
There is certain language in the contract, Ms. Powles-Thompson, that talks about how the
5-day
board could furlough all those scenarios that are in
But
there.
they're paid no more than 5%.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I can go in tomorrow and I can lose my job. I don't have that guarantee. So that is a benefit, and that is what the liquidated damages is there for. I think to keep people, to make sure that we have a stable school year.
President Sam Martinez, just a quick point of order.
Sure.
To add, technically, because this item was brought forward as a voting item, a member that had a dissenting vote would have to be the one to bring this item forward again, and then it would need the second to come forward again for another review and a potential vote going forward. So I just wanted to bring up that quick point of order if you wanted to note that.
So to be clear, at the end of this board meeting, somebody would have to ask to bring it back from the dissenting, but it's a 2-2 vote.
To place it on a future agenda. It doesn't have to be today. It could just be at any future time.
Okay.
That a member of the dissenting vote is to request that it be brought forward, that something be brought forward again, and then it receives the second to move forward for you to
Got it.
discuss again.
Thank you.
Can I,
Understood.
sorry, I just wanted to say that I don't know that I would necessarily, that you can assume that all of the staff would not be interested in this policy. And I say that because I think that as a staff member who, you have experiences where your colleague who's next door is out for, a week or whatever, you recognize there is a burden there. I just think being able to have their voice heard about it, and also talking about, is it attractive as far as what our district feels like in regard to, attracting and retaining people. I think there's a point to that too. So I guess I wouldn't assume necessarily that every single teacher would say, no, we don't need this policy, because they've felt the burden. And our kids, who many of us have kids in the district, have felt the burden as well. So I guess I think there is an opportunity to hear both sides, and then we could make a policy decision feeling like we have the full information.
Yeah,
We have a
agreed.
difference of opinion is all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and look, again, and Ms. Pringle, I agree. I mean, this is about student achievement without question, and but it's also about teacher success as well in the classroom. So that's why I feel, to Ms. Sayas' point and Ms. Underhill, it's a blend of student achievement, teacher success, while ensuring that we show our associates that we value them. And that's why I proposed what I did, because in light of the fact that they do sign their contracts so early, that giving them, a little grace period from that point for about 45 days, I think, would go a long way, and I think it certainly would show that, we value their decisions to potentially, move. So, anyway.
So we've voted, we've had conversation, it failed. At the end of this board meeting, if any board member wants to bring this policy back as defined, we can. Thank you,
All right.
Dr.
Thank you
Davidson.
for your time. Yeah.
All right, 10.8, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities. Ms. Myers.
Good evening again. President Ceja Martinez, members of the governing board. We are 5 weeks in to the legislative session. And I would like to note one item this evening, that on February 1st, Governor Ducey vetoed Senate Bill 1143, which was the conformity bill that was intended to align the Arizona state tax law to the Internal Revenue Code with the tax changes that were put into effect in 2018 at a federal level. And so that bill was vetoed, and therefore additional revenues that will be paid through taxes in the state of Arizona for 2018 for not being aligned to the federal tax cuts will be intended for the state's rainy day fund. And estimates show that that can be anywhere from $150 to $200 million. That ends the report.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Informational reports, 11.1 are viewable online, 11.2 district enrollment, and 11.3 report on upcoming meetings and events. It is February 14th, and there is a, Miss Ari, you wanted to?
I'll keep it brief since it is February 14th, but a couple of big things that are coming up in the district, probably the next big one, and I can tell you we have only a few seats left for anyone who may want to join our spring field trip. It's going to Raymond S. Kellis, Santa Fe Elementary School, and Heritage Elementary School. We have a really great group of community members who have signed up to join us. Of course, governing board members, if you'll be joining us, please do let me know so we can reserve a space for you. We'd love to have you there.
And have we added, invited our bond committee, bond advisory committee?
I think a number of them are on just our standard list, but I will make sure that they all get that invite.
Thank you. Anything else, Governing Board, you'd like to highlight on the list? It's available online. Moving forward to number 12.1, board member to readdress any agenda items. I think we are in good order. 12.2, draft agenda for February 28th. It does include an executive session.
And I'll get your pizza.
David wants pizza, what cheese? And 12.3, future governing board items. I did request that we have a study session on per pupil spending and student achievement correlation. I sent some emails and around that. So do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate, Mr. Savoy, we discussed, can you send the report about the application process for travel, for administration travel, and then we can decide later if we want to discuss it, please? And do I get a second?
A second.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sandoval, any future agenda items?
Yeah, so that and it, can I, just make a suggestion on our spreadsheet that we have?
Yeah, Ms. Mushan, yes.
Yeah, because I think, and I don't know if we voted on this or if it's, maybe, just something that we're going to adhere to, but when we make I guess a suggestion on a future agenda item, was it by the next quarter we would see it? Quarter after next. So can we, maybe color code the sheet to kind of show when it was, asked to be added to a future agenda and then show when that quarter? Okay, perfect.
We're visual learners.
So that said, I would like to have another discussion around liquidated damages pending the survey and information that the district is going to capture for us.
And I will second that. Ms. Pingarelli, any agenda items?
I do. I would like the cost of all memberships and associations that the district belongs to, including ASBA. That's it. And it's just a report. Yeah.
I'll second that. Ms. Underhill?
Sorry.
All right.
I'm loading it up. I loaded it up the last couple times. So.
Okay. It looks like, thank you again, Governing Board and Administration, for focusing on Q1 stewardship of resources. We continue to bring up the conversation on student achievement, which is coming up. And we are at the end at 8:51.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Love you. I move to adjourn the meeting at 8:51. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Aye. Motion passes.